Welcome back, everyone, to the Word Traction Podcast. And when is an idiot useful? When is an idiot useful? There is uh, a term, a Russian term, of useful idiot. Uh, Polezny durak. Polezny durak. And that's a useful idiot. And it has some very real world applications to our current situation because when you're an experienced agent runner, an experienced spy chief or sheik, which we also have in the UAE, but when you're responsible for managing assets, then you have to you often have to take the good with the bad, but it comes down to what are your goals? You know, no one agent, no one asset, no one peanut butter and jelly sandwich is is all good, all bad. It's goals, expectations. I mean, what can I use this for? And our friend Vladimir Putin, with his particular useful idiot, he put his money on the right number and hit it a few times over, not without some extensive work and laying the groundwork for over a long period of years. But again, you think back to my youth. Was I was always very deep into it starts for all of us with fiction, and there was nothing more intriguing for me as a young kid than the spy novels of the Cold War, because that's my era, and there were so many, there was so much good material, and like all of the best ones are truth stranger than fiction, back to truth again. You get a little bit. We won't get into the John Bolton of it all, and sometimes retired spies often got in trouble for giving a little bit too much. But that is how the intrigue was allowed to build. It was like anticipation, right? And for me, the gateway drugs of that initial early 1970s exploration into spy novels was the John le Carre and those that came after him, Graham Greene, going back a little further. But the spy master in chief, who actually was a full time employee of British Secret Service, John le Carre, who was wrote the Carla trilogy, which I have argued on this platform and others, is not only is it a great spy story that if you just took Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy out of that trifecta and you held it on its own, then it is arguably one of the greatest works of fiction, full stop, in for 25 years uh, uh, after its release. I mean, there's you can you we can get all salty about, well, that's not real fiction. That's not a real writer. That's not, he wasn't trained in Iowa, that kind of thing. He was such a deft tactician that you were there on the front lines. You were there in Germany. You were there as Smiley made his way from England to at home and in London and Bayswater Street where he lived and his trips to the beautiful Hanseatic city of Hamburg and describing what it was like in early autumn. And it was, if you're looking for a summer beach read, you could do all three. The Carla trilogy, which was uh, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, The Honorable Schoolboy, and then Smiley's People. And the first and the last are the best. One in the middle, whatever. But there are also another half dozen. John le Carré, whose his real name was Cornwall, the man, and he passed away just a couple of years ago. Just a master tactician. So that is s- my little swerve to the right, but it's pertinent. You know, where I came to national security espionage, which has been a lifelong obsession, was, as maybe for many other people, including those that made it their entire life's work, that initial gateway drug that made it at a time, uh, Berlin at that point, going right through. We've talked about this on the platform before about the magic of Beirut 15 years later as the center of the universe for journalists. But what are journalists without spies? And Beirut was the center of the universe for a while, and it's depressing to see what's happening to Lebanon right now, and and the lie is very depressing as well. But yeah, so what did Vladimir Putin think he was getting, right, with his useful idiot? Name implies that there may be an upside limitation to how much your agent can operate independently as an American man who came up at a particular time and having known, not, I've never worked in U.S. intelligence before, but I've known far too many friends who have. And you think about, the East versus West mentality. The the West being a little bit more abrupt, more American football than soccer, more boxing than judo or aikido, the ones that I sometimes unfairly lump together. What I the disciplines of Asian fighting that I did when I was a youth, particularly judo, was was instructive, particularly when not getting too heavy, but the philosophical as I got older, and I did get older, that you appreciate the subtle differences in what it means to use your opponent's momentum against them versus the American style, which is put on a helmet and run straight over somebody. There's joy in both, and I was fortunate enough to participate in both versions of martial endeavors, like those two things. But if I was thinking from the perspective of a recruiter in the CIA in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and onward from there, you know, uh, and the same as well for MI6, for British Secret Service. We'll separate the bond of it all because handsome dudes with fine cars and lighters and martinis are just fine. But the nuts and bolts of it, there was still a little bit more. We we want we want the Oppenheimer, where the Russians, when they, for instance, when they had the Cambridge Five, right? Kim Philby, Donald McLean, and Burgess, and the rest. They kind of got a grab bag. Philby was quirky, and many of them had some deep seated psychological things that needed to be managed. But you take what you can get, and Vladimir Putin was not old enough to be running those gentlemen at that time. But there's a legacy there, and you have to view Russia as where it is geographically and philosophically, is at the where East meets West, right? You think of that as uh, the influence going further back, like thousands of years. We get so hung up on, we're about to celebrate 250, which is really only 65 if you talk about when everybody had equal rights, and that's being disintegrated right in front of our eyes. But whatever, 250. That was that is nothing if you're talking about the Mongol hordes in Russia, and fast forward 2,000 years and Peter the Great. But Russians learn and were taught lessons along the way to understand the philosophies of the East as well as the West, because they were living on the fault line between the two. And of course, Russia is a gigantic country, as China is as well. But if you look at Russia from its easternmost, uh, Vladivostok, and then travel back to Moscow, it's more than a day's hike. And there's a lot of land and a lot of steppes and a lot of ice and the like. But it's a distillation of a lot of different periods and philosophies. Vladimir Putin identified a valuable asset that happened to be a useful idiot. But the beauty, if you look at the timeline from 2015, he was connected with Trump in more indirect ways before then. Paul Manafort went back even further, mostly FAFO in Ukraine with the Zelensky predecessors, and the which was a corrupt bazaar. That's why Manafort got along so well there, and some of his flunkies. They spent a long time working in Ukraine, but with crossovers, because that was a government before Zelensky that was much more sympathetic to Moscow, and that's how the fractures, and then the taking the stab at in 2014 that was successful. That was Crimea, and things just moved along, and that was Obama into Trump 1.0, and the relationship was built there. The actual capture involves some very personal contacts between some of Putin's assets. Uh, call them call them sparrows, and Trump, and what it took to set the hook deep enough in the flesh of a fleshy man in order to keep it going now for essentially 15 years, but but a decade in earnest, right? From the Trump 1.0 till now. What did it take? That we'll do that full ugly details of that and the Epstein flavor of it all on another podcast. What I'm just trying to draw out tonight is the distinction of having somebody that is pliable. Of course, I mean, you're an agent running in the field, right? Would you like to be able to control every aspect of every agent in every aspect of their life every day? Sure. Realistic? No, never. These are human beings with uh, with frailties and failings and shortcomings, and tremendous gifts. Some of them, you would argue that many of them maybe didn't have that many great gifts if they were able to be compromised in that particular way. But it's every human is a wonder. You know, a wonder to behold. And Trump certainly is a wonder, not wonderful, but but a wonder of physics and hate and grievance and envy and other emotions. So I'm sure there's love in there too for at least a couple of his children, and that comes and goes depending if it's your first or your second wedding. What if you captured someone? If you had a tame agent asset, whether it be a useful idiot or another variety, but particularly with the the U.S. border, Russians have been running in and out of the U.S. for as long as they've cared to. It's we've had successes too, and it's spun off some beautiful television programs. Americans is pretty good. Um, yeah, and so that's uh, eh, getting in and out of here as a Russian is a lot easier than for an American getting in and out of Russia and operating there for extended periods of time. It's they have a much per capita. Uh, they have a much larger and more sophisticated intelligence apparatus still today, even though their assets are a little bit under pressure. But the thing that people lose sight of is it's like, oh well, uh, they're losing the war, and Putin's running out of soldiers or cannon fodder, however you want to refer to them. He's used up his missiles, and he can't sell enough oil, so he's Vladimir Putin as a man will eventually know this. But I would say it's about even money. Elon, that's a lot of money. Putin's been packing away billions and tens of billions for a quarter century. So math is still remains undefeated. So if Rush is hurting, Voda's fine. You know, he's 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 getting that the beluga on a slow night. He's getting the Osetra. You know, he's fine. He's got his caviar, his Bellinis, his champagne, and he's rocking it, and plenty of entertainment. Sparrow or any other bird you want to name. He's got plenty. What real the absolute genius of Trump 2.0, obviously, we've talked about this before. Putin was planning to win in 2020. The plan was two, at least two for starters. They weren't they weren't prepared to do the insurrection thing in 2020 because if you put truth serum into all involved, how many people thought that Trump was going to win initially to begin with? I mean, he didn't even win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton did. But the vagaries of the electoral system, which is a fucking joke. But that'll take us some time to get rid of that. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're going to run it back. We already know how to do the voting machines. We'll do a better job. We learned lots of lessons, and Putin, like I've said before, at January 6th, was Putin pouting? Was he screaming? Was he throwing Big Macs, fries, and stuffed dolls of Mayor McCheese against the wall in anger and frustration? No, this is a professional. This is a trained Russian spy and killer. He doesn't pout. He doesn't scream. He doesn't cry. And he doesn't carry a grudge or a grievance because he knows that that kind of energy is a distraction. And he knows as well as anybody, or has put into practice better than most, how do you use chaos within a larger strategy, right? As a tactical weapon, chaos in a larger strategy, without allowing the chaos to distract you and become, the employing a strategy involving chaos. It's always the risk that it becomes self-defeating. I mean, it's not a deep theory thing. If you play the visual in your head, you insert a a free radical into a closed system and just hope that everything's going to work out fine, without supervision or targeting or monitoring or the right conditions. No, it doesn't work that way. You can, yeah, I mean, to use a technical term, you can fuck shit up pretty good, but does that really help you to achieve your goal? Overlay is Project 2025, right? That they Heritage and those clowns started running that around in 22, right? And putting the framework together for that in 22. They didn't really have they didn't have it in Trump 1.0 because again, nobody thought it was going to happen. And then did they think he was going to just ride out directly through? I mean, Putin he was planning for a win because you have to have your people in place and you have to have a plan. But the Project 2025 genius was it acted as kind of as if you are overlaying a map over a game board, right? So when Heritage developed Project 2025, the way that they did it, as we've discussed, is they made several trips. I was having an argument this very day with somebody that was trying to downplay the impact of Russian state security on Viktor Orban, which is a silly argument. They didn't win. They didn't offer many good defenses. I think they were just looking for a fight. But they Orban owes his tremendous wealth and his success to Vladimir Putin. And what he did, Orban, learning from the victories and losses that Putin suffered coming up in Moscow after post Yeltsin. It was a rough and tumble. Wasn't supposed to be Putin, right? So he needed to do some shady shit, and they were going to go with a more of a purist, somebody that would look more fondly upon the West, and then he learned some of the most valuable lessons that in his entire life. But we'll do that on another day because that's a longer subject. What Putin learned, wall fell, as Putin was in East Germany, in Dresden then, and came back to the mothership. And then he's back in St. Petersburg and up in local politics, but at the same time involved in organized crime, uh, a little bit disorganized at that point. But that was his postgraduate degree, and he was a very good student, Vladimir Putin. And this the ability to invite the heritage, not heritage, not the heritage or the Heritage Foundation, invited them to come over in the way that Putin was able to showcase Viktor Orban in Hungary and his successes at attacking the media, attacking the judiciary, and doing it in a patient and what still puzzles so many people about Trump doing the way that it's like, well, he's doing it all in the open. There's a magic to that too, right? There's almost there's a value strategically doing things out in the open like that, and it's not an exact, perfectly analogous situation, but it's pretty damn close, and it's worth the study because once you get down into the nuts and bolts, it all becomes very clear. And then Project 2025 was not hidden. It was published. And some people screamed about it louder than others. But everybody, including myself, who dedicated a lot of hours to reading all that shit before, you still in the back of your mind, like, my countrymen, my fellow Americans saw in Trump 1.0, and it was it was 51.5% as fucking horrible as, or less. We saw it all, a lighter version of it, people with people that were able to exert more influence to curb Trump's worst intentions back then. They're not there now. But using the Project 2025 is the tool to allow a useful idiot to follow directions. If you're following directions with one crayon on a blank piece of paper, any idiot can do it. If you're saying, I want you to recreate with a broken pencil on the sidewalk, Rodin, right? A little bit more difficult. So it was the playbook was out in the open. They practiced it. I mean, it was there. And the sycophants, the Stephen Miller, and very importantly, Russ Vogt and others that are, integral parts. And, if Trump declines more quickly than he would like to, we'll see a fight for power at the top because, JD gets it by default because he's the vice president. If Trump has to make an exit prior to the uh, the constitutionally mandated 4-year term, then who will be jumping up and down to take what they feel is their rightful place? And I think all of them know in a way that with all of Trump's faults as as a as a human being, as a man, as a father, certainly as a leader, that none of them, including JD Vance, which he should probably tell himself in the mirror every night, none of them is Donald Trump. As much as I can, we don't hate anybody, but as much as I despise what Trump is doing to our country and to democracy more generally, that I despise that, I have to give him credit because he has very specific communication skills that you you hone them, you perfect them, you sharpen them. But he has a I was going to say I was going to say a gynecological. He has a genetic gift of communicating. Like, I hope you're sitting down. Like a car salesman from Queens. But it's still he can bring people along. Thus the cult analogies, right? The red pill. What keeps simple minds marching along behind somebody who's rather simple himself is he has a great skill in what he's learned. What he has learned. He hasn't read any books to learn these things, but what he's learned by doing, by Professor Kahneman, who, the repetition, repetition, the way to I won't be able to, but it's that people the most effective way to influence people is by repetition, because by constant repetition, it's harder for the people to distinguish the truth from reality. Right? And it's over and over again. And that is Project 2025. That is the playbook. And MAGA is a willing, not majority, but whatever that 31.5% of whatever it is. And it's certainly a smaller number than it was maybe in Trump 1.0. He asked, hopefully, but there's still some people. And, there's no, whatever the fissures, we had the vote in the Senate, and, that, of course, cannot be That's not something that you present to the president, but it's a two-part um, tool where it's a loyalty test. It shows the president which members of the Senate are going to vote against him in a tough vote like that. And but you can pick it apart. Susan Collins could say if she was standing in front of Donald Trump, I have to vote against it, right? I have to vote with, excuse me, vote against you, sir. I have to vote with the Democrats because if I don't, then Graham Plattner is going to eat my lunch and we lose the seat, Mr. President. So I have to do this. Like, okay, all right, Susan, you do you. Cassidy, whatever the fuck. Rand Paul, you already know. Let's talk about free radicals. Rand Paul is an interesting character, as was his daddy, and Lisa Murkowski were the four that voted along with the Democrats. But what happens with that? Does my Saturday stratagem play out? Does Trump use that as a tool to allow him to, in what he would consider a more dignified way, beat a hastier retreat from Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Middle East more broadly? And all he has to do is to bail now, declare victory, make excuses, and say, "Mega, no, I didn't. Mega, I didn't run scared of anybody. I saw the vote from your elected representatives, and I heard my people. I'm Donald J. Trump. I'm nothing if I'm not good to my word. So I brought all the boys and girls home, and we won. Oil prices are going to be coming down soon. Just trust me. Trust me. It'll be fine." And then he can go back and F around. And my backup, well, that will happen or it won't. He'll frame it in any way he wants. But it makes good sense from a strategy point of view, as it was provided for him, to give, just build in a little of that plausible deniability that I've talked about in the other context of the Saturday stratagems, the Supreme Court. We have more decisions coming down tomorrow, and the ones that the Supreme Court built in as progressive wins, that Trump is going to play his part. The birthright citizenship is against him. He'll come out, he'll scream, he'll say, "I can't believe I appointed these fucking these criminals, these cowards, these traitors." Right? This is treason. And they make, jump up and down. But again, it's plausible deniability. It allows the John Roberts Supreme Court to stand up and say, tariffs case, birthright citizenship, we were with you, our progressive brothers and sisters. Right? We, that wasn't what we found out. That wasn't the kind of vibe they were giving off yesterday. 6-3, 6-3. But the big dog is birthright citizenship. So displeased pooch out there. He's saying you're talking too much. Wrap it up. So I listen to dogs better than I do humans. So Vladimir Putin, all he's trying to do is to hold on and ride out. Do we have great intelligence? I do not have great intelligence. As I wrote stories over a year ago about the way that Vladimir Putin employed the services of Prime Minister Modi, not surprisingly, an Indian man as the Prime Minister of India, to try to form a relationship with J.D. Vance's wife and mother of his four children. the ones that he's rather suspicious of. Is Vladimir Putin going to be able to take a hostage after Trump leaves? I mean, he will take the hostage before Trump leaves, but is he going to be able to recruit and groom a successor in interest? Because Trump, Putin is, what is he? He's 6 years younger than Trump, hmm, but he is he's still doing his judo workout. He's still employing that discipline, patient man that is on the fault line of East and West. A man that has worked he's been an agent in East Germany, an agent in Russia, and he's operated in many other countries, and he's trying at the same time as he's running U.S. Assets. He is trying desperately with Nigel Farage and others to control Great Britain, France, and Germany. Some other smaller markets too. Will he be successful in all of them? No. Will he cry? Will he scream? Will he break shit? No, because he's a professional. And if he isn't a trillionaire, he's more than halfway there. And how much does one man really need? So, we'll wrap up for tonight. Putin, of course, is not my obsession, but my favorite course of study outside of the normal politics of the United States. But it is all intertwined because without Putin, there is no Trump 2.0. There is no Trump 1.0. And Project 2025, it has Heritage Foundation. Heritage is written across the bottom of it, dated, not surprisingly, in 2025. 3 years in the making. But who really developed the not even the outline, the first draft of Project 2025? That was Mr. Putin. Enjoy your reading. And thank you once again. Be kind enough to restack, retweet. I know it went a little bit long tonight, but Jesus, I missed yesterday. That was not a gunshot. That was an asshole dropping a full garbage can, I guess. But yeah, be kind enough to share it around for anybody that is older than you are and doesn't mind a longer read. And somebody was giving me shit in the feed. It's like, you got to speak faster. I said, yeah, when I'm in a hurry, I speak faster. As an essayist, not really. But there will be other opportunities. And but I am grateful to each and every one of you. And subscribe if you haven't. If you want to join the low dollar club, feel free to. If you want a free subscribe, that is absolutely fantastic. If you want to share this with a friend, that's great. If you want to share it off of the platform with a friend on FBook, you saw that uh, your boy Mark Zuckerberg is getting into he's doing his own prediction market, and he's doing something that's kind of cute. Is that he's starting it as a token, not token in the crypto sense, or in the AI sense, but he's doing it like the most invasive species of online entertainment is that fuck is it called? Chumba Casino, right? Which is I've never actually played it, but I've read studies when I was doing research about I guess about the legislation in Australia to ban access to platforms for under 16, which is growing in other countries. Individual states in the U.S. are doing that too, and Australia is having a tough time with it because guess what? Kids at age 15 know as much or more than many of us do about manipulating, uh, all sorts of things and doing workarounds. And the goal was never to keep them off of the platforms, but just to keep them from establishing new accounts. Therefore, the platforms couldn't target advertising and content at them if they were just using it as a visitor. So it's of course it's imperfect, and kids will certainly find workarounds faster than I will, and maybe some of you too. But doing nothing is not an option. So that's on my long list of perhaps between now and the midterms, I won't be spending as much time on that, on getting the fucking Super Bowl out of Nashville in 2030. Uh, collective action is what it's all about. Learning about Trump's last thing, as my famous last words are, "This is my last item." Listening today to all of the different ways that Trump is going to try to attach the SAVE Act to some other piece of legislation or break it into pieces and attach components of it in order to disenfranchise voters. Everything that you've tired of me saying about uh, ID is something that each and every one of you and your significant other and your entire family, if you want to do something helpful, and even if you're in a blue friendly state, as I am, or a Commonwealth in northern Massachusetts, where we have a governor and Mayor Wu in Boston that are fully aligned in fighting for election integrity. The fascists are going to be doing crazy ass shit as frequently as they can. There's going to be last minute surprises, right? Chaos, as mentioned earlier. Ask yourself the question and then answer honestly. Or if you're worried that you're too busy, then have your spouse, your better half, your kids, your mom, your dad ask you the question and hold you to the answer. Do you have valid identification? I think the fascists are coming soon, any minute. I can hear them rolling up the street. So if I'm not here tomorrow, it's been fun. Um, Voter ID. We talked about women, excuse me, humans, but predominantly women that have been married and have changed their name to that of their spouse, that their birth certificate no longer reflects their current legal name. Okay. But for everybody else, certified copy of your birth certificate, get one. Right? And that's short money. That's 10 to 15 bucks, internet, and bada bing, as the kids say. The best answer is valid passport, and think about valid until January 29, meaning through the 28 election cycle. Because then you don't have to think about it again. If you got the passport, you're good. No passport, you don't have a buck 65 to drop for a new one. Do you have the real ID? Is your real ID up to date? Is it up to date through this election and preferably through 2028 full cycle, meaning January 29? I don't drive. I don't have any of those things. Where do I start? Call your local municipality or go on the website of your state voter commission, you know, familiarize yourself. I can speak about the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and several, ones that I pick on, like, I've lived in Florida longer than many of you have been alive in total. I study Texas because they do crazy ass shit, and California because it's, bigger economy than every other country in the world except for three. Um, but do it. And it's, we were talking about it in March, right? Next week, 4th of July holiday, and all by the time that's over, then it's going to be the 4th, 5th. Then you're going to be on Monday, the 6th of July, right? And then you're going to be four months away, right? Right. Um, math fail. You're going to be you are going to be 120 days away from the election at that point. One of the things that Trump and the fascists can do is fuck with the mail. So if you had planned to do mail-in balloting, vote by mail, you got to call your peeps, go online, make sure you're signed up for that. Yeah, figure out what the rules are to file a provisional ballot. If you lose it, it the dog ate it, something like that. You have to really game it out. You don't drive. You're handicapped in some way that doesn't allow you to get to the voting place, and you insist on voting in person. It's part of your annual social event. That's great. You have the right. So make a plan now. That your sister or brother will take you to the voting place, the elementary school, hopefully 4 miles down the road. And it doesn't, but that's November. It's not going to be snowing. We hope. Although I've lived through a couple Halloween surprises in the Commonwealth. Yeah, so it's real now. It's not half a year, right? It's it'll be a third of a year, right? Uh, it'll be coming up too fast, and you're going to have a good time during your summer and do other shit and World Cup and victory parades and Patriots preseason, yeah, all that stuff. So, thank you again, and I appreciate your patience. But that voter ID thing is just it's wearing on me because that Trump is going to not, even if he fails, he's holding the housing bill, bipartisan housing bill, hostage to the SAVE Act, right? Will he lose on that? Sure, maybe he will, but he's going to try something next week. And again, they can do certain things, and he may send so many pizzas that the cowards in the Senate will relent and do the nuclear option with the filibuster, and then you just need a simple majority. And is it illegal for them to do that a week before the election? Right? The Purcell principle, which has been blown up 3 times in the last 15 minutes by this Supreme Court already, that you're not supposed to make changes right before an election, but right before has been in quotes and been the victim of domestic violence. Yeah. So plan as if the fascist plan as if the fascists are coming for you because they are. in some way, shape, or form. And and Vladimir, he's not even putting in an appearance, and he still has shit running okay. So, cheers, thank you, great night, and we'll be back with you tomorrow, Thursday, which is well, Thursday is corrupt connections. We'll see you then. Thank you very much.